Hello and welcome to the Truehope Cast podcast, where we take a deep dive into mental health's many physiological and psychological aspects. This is the show for you if you're looking for information, knowledge, motivation and solutions, and that's what we are all about here at Truehope Canada. And Truehope Canada is a mind and body-based supplement company dedicated first and foremost to promoting brain and body health through non-invasive nutritional means. For more information about us, you can visit truehopecanada.com. Today, I welcome Dr. Angelo Valenti to the podcast. Now, Dr. Angelo is a consulting psychologist who lives in Nashville, Tennessee. His firm, the Company Psychologist, helps companies hire the right people for their cultures, develops talent within organizations, and coaches present and future leaders. He also coaches individuals who want to live their best personal and professional life. He's the author of You're Making This Way Too Hard. Find your easy way to enjoy life. Today, we're going to be discussing relationships, self-love, and how systems around us influence us, as well as talking about the dangers of social media, talking about gratitude, and also how stress plays a massive role in our lives. Enjoy the show. Okay, hi, and welcome to the show, Dr. Angelo. How are you? What is going well?
I'm terrific. Everything's going well. How could it not be going well?
Well, with a positive attitude like that, everything's going to be great. So awesome. Thank you so much for coming to the show. And we're going to be discussing relationships, self-love, and how the systems around us influence us in the day. But before we jump into that amazing topic, would you mind just giving us a little bit of an introduction to who you are and what it is that you do?
Sure. Well, I'm a consulting psychologist in Nashville, Tennessee. I got my undergraduate degree from Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland and my master's and PhD from the University of Georgia in Athens, Georgia. Go Bulldogs. Uh, and I taught college for 4 years at Oklahoma City University, taught psychology. Worked for a consulting firm for a couple of years, and in 1982, I set up my own consulting firm, the Company Psychologist, here in Nashville, Tennessee, and I help businesses build strong teams, build strong cultures, interview the right people for their unique culture. I also work with leaders, coaching them, and coach individuals who are looking to lead their best personal and professional lives.
Wonderful. So it sounds like you have a lot of interaction with human beings and looking to help them kind of get the best out of themselves and what they have around them to do that with.
Yes.
Amazing. Well, when I was checking out your profile and checking out your website and things, which, I'll provide links in the show notes so people can do that themselves as well. But I was attracted to your book that you've got, and it's titled You're Making This Way Too Hard. Find Your Easy Way to Enjoy Life.
Yes.
So I'd love it if you could just maybe tell us a little bit more about that. Like, why did you write it? Who's it for? And what can people learn from something like that? Because
Sure.
the title grabbed me.
Do you mind if I show it to everybody?
That's absolutely fine.
Here it
Beautiful.
is. You're making this way too hard. Find your easy way to enjoy life. And if you'll notice at the bottom, enjoy life is spelled unusually, NJOYLFE. And the reason I did that is because that's my license plate.
Okay, great.
NJOYLFE is my license plate. I've had it on every car I've had since 1991. And it's basically my philosophy of life. And it's unusual enough where I get a lot of comments about it. And I always tell people, they say, nice license plate. And I say, no, that's a philosophy. It's not a license plate. So go forth and enjoy life.
Right.
So I wrote the book because I see so many people today who appear not to be enjoying their life to the extent that they should. They're either feeling stress from friends, family, professional. They're setting expectations that may be unrealistic for them. They're envious of other people. They're anxious. They're suffering from self doubt. And I don't think people were put on earth to be miserable. I don't think miserable is our natural state. I think we're put on this earth to enjoy all the beautiful, wonderful things that life has to offer. And we kind of have to be taught to be miserable. And so what I'm hoping my book will do is unteach the misery and reteach the joy.
Interesting. So it doesn't sound like a self-help book, because I don't, if someone was going to kind of write something like that, they're going up against tens of thousands of other books. It sounds
Right.
more like a guide to help people maybe rewire learned habits from the past. And as you say, like, there's no way human beings would have survived 200 plus thousand years if we were built to, you know, feel awful and not do well in the world. Like, it's just, we wouldn't be here. So
No.
is it a self-help book, or is it something different?
Well, I say in the introduction to the book, it is not a self-help book. It's a self-acceptance book.
Okay.
And there's a big difference. I think self-help books are great. I've read a lot of them myself, and I mentioned in the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People was written in the 1930s, and I'm not sure anybody's written a better one
Hmm.
since. So the purpose of my book is really to help people to learn to love themselves, take care of themselves, build better relationships, take more control of their life, and really find the things that give them joy. And joy is a very individual thing. I
Hmm.
can't I can't describe what's going to make you feel joyful, but you can.
Yeah.
And so that's my purpose, is to help people find that self-acceptance, find that self-love, self-care, and find the joy that's there. It's there. They just have to find it.
Yeah, I think that's so different than a self-help book, because it sounds like you're providing individuals the ability to kind of internalize what's going on for them in their surroundings, and be able to find what happiness means to them. What does joy mean to them? What does grace and gratitude and all these things like mean to them on a personal level? Because yeah, it's going to be different for everyone.
Right. And that's really the whole point. It's different for everyone.
Hmm.
So I'm not trying to write a prescription, that a one size fits all prescription. I even ask some questions in the book that only the individual can answer. And
Hmm.
how their journey progresses kind of depends on how they answer those questions. But you mentioned one word, gratitude, that I think is critically important. I think if you learn to embrace whatever comes your way with a sense of gratitude, you're well on your way to finding that self-love and that self-acceptance. You could How you view a situation is everything. It's not there's a cliche. It's not what happens to you, it's how you react to what happens to you, but it really is true.
Hmm.
And two people will be in the same situation, and one of them will react to it as a devastating setback that's going to ruin their life for years to come, and another person is going to view it as a challenge or an opportunity to grow and get better and maybe make lemonade out of lemons.
Hmm.
But it really depends on your perspective.
Absolutely. I've read a few self-help books. None of them really kind of resonated with me. I don't, I think that if you objectively look at some of the ones that are out there, they're not they don't really like hit home. Like, you could, it's like the latest diet or something. You're
Right.
kind of like motivated to jump into that for a couple of weeks, but it's this external thing in this book or this piece of paper or this blog, rather than reading something that makes you, yeah, think internally about you and your life and your past and the future that you want. And the book that really began to change my life in regards to my relationship with stress and anxiety and depression and being judgmental. I found myself like super judgmental in like my mid 20s, and it just like super unhelpful
Right.
and draining, because it was like this constant thing. Like, I think it's important to, like, you can judge the speed of a car coming towards you, whether you can cross the street or not. Like, you should have the ability to judge things. But in the gym with other people, and like they're lifting weights, and like this whole like egotistical thing, like I found that, like, just being like from a competitive footballer in my early days living in the UK, that type of judgmentalism was just super unhelpful. And I read a book that sounds like it's very similar to yours in regards to like being a self-acceptance book, a guide, I'm going to grab it because I actually
Sure.
was reading it this morning. But it's called A Guide to the Good Life, and it's about stoicism, and it's not really.
Sure.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
read Marcus Aurelius, you'll get a lot of good stuff out of that.
100%. And like Marcus Aurelius is quoted in here a lot. This is by William Irving, and this book absolutely changed my relationship with so many things that were just like holding me back massively unnecessarily. They were, without question, like we said, like you said at the top of the show, things that I had learnt that was actually kind of like making me miserable.
Right.
And it was a book that helped me internalize what I was going through. And I think, like, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like this book and your book, I feel like it simplifies lots of things within your life to get back to like a basic level, to kind of forget a lot of this external nonsense that comes into our life that changes how we, you know, chemically, emotionally, physically feel. And once you can begin to filter that noise, you can actually hear like how you're thinking, how you're feeling, and you can become much more internalized to like who you are in moments of the day.
Well, the word you mentioned is a word that I use all the time, and that's noise. And there's more noise out there now
Hmm.
than there's ever been.
Yeah.
I mean, you can drown. It's a mixed metaphor, I know, but you can drown in the noise because it's coming from the social media. eh, Besides the normal places where it used to come from, which is family, friends, your
Hmm.
relationships, your work. I mean, we're bombarded. If we let ourselves, we can get bombarded by noise 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And you start to believe that the noise that you're hearing actually influences your life,
Hmm.
actually has an impact on your life, when it really doesn't. I mean, if you get into a discussion with somebody on Facebook or X or whatever platform you use, you get into an argument with somebody, you're not going to change their mind. They're not going to change your mind. You've wasted God only knows how many hours and made yourself stressed and miserable. And it has really no impact on your life whatsoever.
Right.
It's irrelevant. And we've allowed things that are irrelevant to become quote unquote important, even though they're not important.
Sure.
They become top of the mind, let's say, and it creates uh, artificial stress and anxiety where none would have existed otherwise. So the kind of one of the points in my book is, if you learn to take control of your life and make decisions that are going to be beneficial to you, you can filter out a lot of that noise. And some people would say, well, that's selfish. If you just, but everybody is selfish. Everybody is concerned about themselves. And it is a fact of life that nobody cares about you as much as you care about you.
That's right.
So if you take care of yourself first, you're going to be in a much better position to take care of those that are those people who are important to you and those things that are important to you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's important to note that when so many people are engaging on social media and having conversations, conversations, having correct some sort of weird social media dialogue. And it's interesting because, like, if those two people to be face to face with actual like humanity in the building,
Right.
the things that are said and the tone, like, they would not exist, because we have this very unusual platform where this crazy wild echo chamber where people can like say things they would never say to somebody's face.
No.
Because, well, what one, for example, like a lot of things that you said on social media, if you said to someone's face, you could be risking getting punched in the face. You're looking
And
physical.
probably justifiably.
Well, yeah,
Right.
I mean, I guess I
Uh,
get I guess so, for sure. But like when you take that massive human element about being within the same energy distance as somebody, looking in somebody's eyes, and you have that human connection with our senses, it's such an incredibly different way that you communicate with somebody, and this whole social media realm that we find ourselves in is incredibly nuanced. It's incredibly new to our ancient um, biological system of which we've
Yes.
been learned to communicate. So we're not. I don't think we ever will, but we've not evolved biologically to deal with this like new form of communication.
No, you're 100% right, and people hide behind anonymity. I
Hmm.
mean, you can create a profile and be anybody or anything you wanna be,
Yeah,
and you can interact with the entire rest of the social media world as that fictitious entity, and I don't think that most people are inherently cruel
no,
or insensitive or hateful at their core.
no,
But if you have an anonymous platform, you can spew out all of the things that you might think, but
yeah.
as you said, would never say to a person face to face. And it has a tremendous negative effect both on you and the person that you're communicating with.
Absolutely. And it teaches people because like we see kids from a very young age on smartphones, on social media.
Yeah.
They actually begin to when they're using these platforms and engaging in that type of communication, they're not they're not living in reality because yeah, as I say, you cannot say those things to other people.
And wouldn't.
Yeah, and they
And
yeah, for sure, they certainly wouldn't.
no, and people, most parents don't raise their children to say hurtful, ugly things to other people. And it's one of the things that social media has given us an outlet
Hmm.
to vent the worst versions of ourselves. And one of the like button has caused suicides, murders, depression, low self-esteem because people base a lot of their opinion of themselves on what random people say
Yeah.
about them on social media.
Hmm.
And I have a paragraph in my book called "Don't Argue with Idiots." because because it once you quit playing the game,
Hmm.
you realize how stupid the game was and that there's no winner in the game.
Yeah. I think that I think that these platforms have created you use the word outlet is what exactly what I was thinking about. But like kind of like very ineffective therapy for people who are anxious, who are depressed, who are stressed. And they can go online and they can like, dislike, comment. They can do all these things as not only just like a chemical dopamine hit, which is going to make
Yes.
them kind of feel good, like in the moment, but also like where a lot of people don't have outlets for their stress. They don't have outlets for the anger or the rage or the panic that they feel. And if they're able to like go on to somebody's comment or somebody's image and, write something, then that's kind of like technically kind of getting that anxiety or that stress out a little bit, but it's not obviously not affecting the root cause of why that individual is anxious or stressful in the moment. That's the only way I can really foresee, because there are people who spend 8 hours a day on like Twitter, just like
Yes.
getting that dopamine hit constantly, looking for
Yes.
those interactions, looking for those fights. And I can only imagine that they're looking to fill this void that's within their, I'm going to use the word soul here, and they're unable to get that in their life, so that they have to go online to get this chemical hit or to deal with something that's bubbling up inside of them that they're unable to internalize and work through themselves.
Well, I think social media has been one of the most isolating entities
Hmm.
in the history of the world. I mean, when you see a family, a husband, a wife, and 3 kids sitting at the dinner table, and they're all on their
It's
phones,
gross. It's gross.
it's disgusting.
Yeah.
Some of my fondest memories as a child were Sunday dinners at grandma's
Yeah.
house. Um, and I think they're replacing real human interaction with something that's totally artificial. And the way I describe it is it's like cotton candy. You mentioned the dopamine hit. It gives you a sugar high,
Hmm.
but there's no substance to it.
Yeah.
If you're hungry, you could eat cotton candy and it's going to satisfy you for a short time. But if you continue to eat nothing but cotton candy all day, you're going to die.
Hmm.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can see. I mean, there's lots of statistics and correlations between the introduction of social media and the horrific rise in mental disorders, suicides, all these things. Like, it's
Right.
absolutely correlated. And um, yeah, I think in certain smaller communities, maybe not in like huge big cities, but I think the parents are becoming to be a little bit more aware of the effect of social media on teens, and hopefully taking the right steps within their own home and within their kids. That, my kids are 2 and 5, so they're quite young, but they obviously see people on phones. They see me on my
Yeah.
phone. I do my best to keep it in my office, but sometimes it's just not possible. And it must be super interesting for even like a baby to look at you looking at this weird black thing in your hand, and it,
Ignoring the baby, but looking at that.
ignoring the baby, but also like, what is this weird thing that's getting my primary caregiver's attention like 1,000 times a day? Like, it must be a very mysterious thing. And obviously, as a small child, you'd be attracted to that because it's
Sure.
like, yeah, it's it's very, very strange. When I got my first phone when I was 19, it was this brick thing. It was awful. It was my dad's like old phone, and it could do messaging and it could make phone calls. And I barely used the thing, to be honest, because I was 19 and like my friends lived pretty close by. And it's like, I don't think my personality back then could have handled the access and capabilities that a smartphone has today. Like,
Right.
I feel blessed that that wasn't my generation, but I also feel sorry for these teenagers who, I think a lot of them probably when they're 12, 13, 14, only get into it because their friends have it, or like
Yes.
there's other people, and it ends up being like the latest pair of trainers or sneakers, excuse me, or the latest, fashion wear. And it ends up just becoming this accessory that really, really doesn't serve those young people, where it's a key part of life, where engaging, communicating, getting in fights, mending relationships, all of these things need to be done in person. And if we're now transferring that to this weird device, like, we're only going to have like we're going to create a new species of individual, like
Yes.
psychologically, for sure. The brains are going to change, and if it gets
Yeah.
worse and worse, those parts of the brain that are used to communicating, one-on-one with individuals, those will certainly decay, and we'll have this new species of individual.
I couldn't agree more. It's dehumanizing is what it is. And um, I think that when I was a little kid, we went out and played as a group. We'd meet at the playground
Hmm.
and we'd play sports, or we'd get on the jungle gym or the playground equipment. And we did get into fights and scrapes, and we'd call each other names, and our parents would. That was just part of growing up. If And the saying used to be, "Sticks and stones will break your bones, but words will never hurt you."
Yeah.
But we've become a society where people consider words hurtful,
Yeah.
which I think is ridiculous, because how you interpret a word,
Hmm.
it makes all the difference. you know, so one person might be offended by a certain word, and another person is going to laugh at it and say that's the silliest thing I've ever heard. And,
Yeah.
the person who laughs at it's going to be much more emotionally healthy than the person who gets offended by it, by whatever it is.
Yeah, it's a strange phenomenon. I think about that a lot because we're obviously there's not a lot of countries left in the world that actually have like free speech.
Oh,
And
I would argue there aren't any.
okay, fair. Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I think we have amendments in the states, but like there's it's interesting. Like in the UK for sure. Like there are things you can't say, and you can be arrested for them. And it's I think people get a they misinterpret like what free speech is and how important it is to create dialogue and to create change. But then like coupled with that, like we've massively lost our ability to debate and to have conversations and
Right.
how we can um, come to an understanding with individuals. I guess primarily because a lot of these, let's say, conflicting topics are primarily engaged through on social media, like politics, religion,
Right.
etc. And we
All the
don't,
things you weren't supposed to talk about at family dinners
mhm,
are about the only thing that people talk about on social media.
yeah. And it's like they're really really important topics, and I think that
Yes.
like I remember my parents, my grandparents, and uncles and stuff. You know, we'd sit at the kids' table on Sundays or at Christmas or whatever, and the adults would be on the adult table. And first of all, you wouldn't go and pester the adults. Like
Right.
there were clear boundaries there, and they would have conversations, and it would get heated. But at the end of it, it was like hugs,
Right.
handshakes, all
Let's have a
good.
beer. Yeah.
Let's have a beer. And it's like the reason we've got so many incredible things within our cultures now is because conversations like that were had. And, they go all the way up to, parliamentary debate and just you can just look at the state of them all over the world in regards to like our world leaders can't have a conversation and
Right.
can't debate things and can't handle not being right and seeing perspectives from the other side. We can't do that at the highest level, let alone
We
kind of
can, no, no. And what's happened is I could say something, espouse a point of view, and you might disagree with that point of view.
Mhm.
Now you would label what I said to you as hate speech. It's hateful because I said something that you disagree with, so you find it hateful. It might be disagreeable,
Mhm.
but it's not hateful. When I was teaching, this is in the late 70s, uh, and I was in Oklahoma, which is fairly conservative, but there were very different points of view. Especially, I had a lot of Native American students because Oklahoma had a big Native American population. And before the first class of every semester, I would say, in this class, I don't know how it is in your other classes, but in my class, you are free to express any point of view you would like as long as you're prepared to defend it. And defending it doesn't mean calling everybody else hateful, right?
Sure.
Right? So if you have a well-reasoned point of view, you might be able to change somebody else's mind. Nobody's interested in trying to change somebody else's mind with a reasoned argument
Mhm.
anymore. They just want whoever yells the loudest seems to carry the day. And that's not the way that you build a well informed, well reasoned population.
Yeah, and there's no way we have that type of policy within classrooms or especially
Oh no.
universities
Oh,
anymore.
universities are terrible. I would get fired in 5 minutes if I was trying to teach at most universities now, because if I have a strong opinion about something, I've done my research and I'm prepared to defend it.
Yeah.
And if somebody disagrees with me, that's fine. Let's have a discussion about it. I'm not going to call you hateful. You might
Hmm.
call me hateful, but I'm not going to call you hateful. So no, I wouldn't last very long, because I believe in the free exchange of ideas,
Hmm.
and that seems to be a principle that has gone away.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're not having discussion and free roaming ideas within a classroom setting, you've got specific rhetoric or specific ideology.
Talking points, basically.
Yeah. And it's like, that's not going to inspire or motivate young individuals who, I guess used to go to universities and colleges to have their minds challenged and opened rather than just like putting so many things into a box where everyone comes out the same, I guess. And, some people
Well,
maybe survive it or don't.
the the saying is that universities used to teach people how to think,
Hmm.
and now they teach people what to think.
There you
And
go.
if they're teaching you what to think, it doesn't require you really to think at all.
No, no.
What
And
a
yeah,
the Aristotelian method of learning is by asking questions. Well, if the professors act like they have all the answers, there's no reason for them to ask questions.
that's right. Yeah, it's not a great environment, and there are some amazing thinkers out there right now who primarily talk through kind of like podcasting that have left the university settings and have been shouting from their hills about this massive issue within educational institutions for a long period of time. So, yeah, it's quite clearly a problem from, we could call them captured institutions, I guess. But just to go back to the conversation we were having about people unable to come to an understanding or have conflicting ideas, conflicting thoughts about specific topics, and how now that just turns into, yeah, well, you're spewing hate speech.
Right.
And I just think about like how have so many individuals come to a point where what somebody says to me or to you makes you so volatile with emotion that all you can kind of go to is hatred and anger rather than sitting back and actually listening to what somebody's saying. And I feel like we have this, and it's all connected with social media for sure, that we have this massive lack of emotional regulation and emotional control. And there's so many different aspects that comes from. Like, we here at Truehope Canada, we focus on body brain nutrition to make sure the brain and body is provided with the necessary nutrients to make the necessary chemicals so you're able to think and feel in specific ways that we would like to attribute to be like normal thinking and feeling. And we have people who suffer from significant psychological disorders where they take our product and their brain is actually getting the necessary ingredients to make the right chemicals so it's able to function properly. And we have a massively nutrient deficient culture, but
Yep.
it's also like, why are we so quick to just like get emotional so fast without actually like being able to sit back and listen to what people are saying?
Well, as a psychologist, I can tell you my thoughts on that are that they're being rewarded for that. And
They're being rewarded for their
for
emotional
their
outburst.
emotional response
Right.
and as you know, you get more of the behavior that you reward. So if their peer group or the people in power are rewarding you for your response,
Mhm.
you're going to respond that way because you
That
want the reward.
that makes sense.
And you, if a kid's yelling, if you have a young child, you have a 2-year old and a 5-year old. Well, at some point, if they haven't already, the 2-year old probably might throw a tantrum over something, right? Well, if you reward that tantrum by picking the child up or giving the child what they're having a tantrum about, what behavior are you rewarding?
Mhm.
The tantrum. My kids, who are 50 and 46 now, Um, and we have fun discussions about it sometime. My 46-year-old said, "You have no idea what it was like to be raised by a psychologist," but he says it laughingly.
That's funny.
Um, but if one of my kids was throwing a tantrum, I would pick them up, put them in their room, close the door, and say, "Whenever you're done, I'll come get you." And if they scream for 3 hours, fine, let them scream for 3 hours. They get tired, they'll quit. And eventually they got to the point where they realized there are other better ways to get what they want than
Yeah.
throwing a tantrum.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, those tantrums are a very normal part of obviously being a
Oh,
small
sure. Oh,
individual who does,
they're just
yeah, and it's fine. It's all good, but it's a huge learning opportunity for those individuals and also the parents and siblings involved, that, we have to learn. It's a very normal part of our evolution and our biology to learn how to deal with the emotional states that come up for us, because but we a lot of people now as adults, they don't have that they don't have that ability. They get to rage and anger, like it's a reaction rather than this like response.
well, I think in some ways we might be as a species de-evolving,
Hmm.
because I think one of the things that differentiates humans from other animals, and we are animals at one level, is the ability for our intellect to overcome our emotions, or to override our emotions, to control our emotions through our intellect.
Right.
And we seem to be losing that capacity. I mean, if you can react, uh, there's a poem that one of the lines of the poem is, "If you can keep your head around when others are losing theirs, you'll be a man." The song, the poem that ends, "You'll be a man, my son."
Right.
But that's one of the characteristics of an evolved human being, is the ability to keep their rational head
Hmm.
when things are kind of going to crap around them. And we seem to be losing that capacity.
I think that if you were to look back, like historically, at us as a species, and how we actually were able to evolve and actually come to a point where we can have those like rational conversations, you can see the significant amount of progress we would have
Yes,
had as civilizations and as nations and as communities. As you say, like, we're going backwards with that, and I just think that so many people are living in a constant stress response, and you can just see that, like, it's a
yes,
pretty standard thing. Like, we have on this show, we've had so many amazing psychologists and therapists around like trauma, and like these individuals are just getting busier and busier and busier because so many people are just like constantly in this stress response. And
right.
there's so many things in our external world, social media, phones being one of them, that like is engaging this part of our nervous system that was, only really primed to work for a couple of minutes to be able to fight, run, or freeze from an enemy. But we have this engaged constantly. And yeah, as you say, like, if we are spending the majority of our time in that nervous system state, we are without question going to biologically change and, in my opinion, de-evolve to be even more worried and even more concerned. And we know that, like, if you are constantly in that fight or flight response, like, your body can only deal with the biochemical necessity of that for a long, only a short period of time, and then symptoms manifest, disease manifests, and we have
Yeah.
a seriously sick culture.
Oh, absolutely. Stress. You can't live in a constant state of stress. But what you can do is learn to filter out the real stressors
Hmm.
from the self-induced stressors. Okay? If somebody walks up to you and puts a gun to your head and says, "Give me all your money or I'm going to kill you," your physiological response to that is going to be stress. But there's a reason for that stress. You
Hmm.
should feel stress.
Hmm.
But if somebody says to you on social media, you're an idiot for thinking this way, what's the harm in that?
Hmm.
What actually has that person done
Hmm.
to you? Nothing,
Yeah,
right?
it's a good point.
But if you buy into it, I think a lot of the stress that people feel is artificial stress. It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't like responsibility in any shape or form. And I think that we've been taught incorrectly that we have no responsibility over our emotions or emotional state. Like we've got no, this happens, I get angry. Like that's just me. That's biology. That's just the way things work. But I think once people recognize that they've got a lot of responsibility in how they engage in the world and within themselves, yeah, I just think people don't really like that
No,
having responsibility of things.
responsibility is a two-edged sword.
Hmm.
It requires some work on your part, taking responsibility, but it is also freeing
Oh
in a
yeah.
lot of ways because it means that you have control over your life and control over how you're going to react to situations. In one of the
That's right.
sections of my book, I talk about developing an internal locus of control where you believe you control what happens to you rather than letting external forces control what happens to you. And I think we've given in to those external forces and we feel like we're out of control,
Hmm.
but we're really not unless we give that control away voluntarily.
That's right.
We always have more control over a situation than we think we do. If you're very, very stressed at work and you say, wow, there's nothing I can do about it. Sure, there is. You can quit. You can, you can start your own business. You can get asked to get transferred to another department.
Hmm.
You can, I mean, there's 100 things you can do, but some of those might seem unpleasant to you, so you choose not to do those. You'd
That's
rather
right.
be stressed by your current situation. We always have
Yeah.
more choices than we think we do.
Yeah, I want to pull this back to gratitude because that's a key word that we spoke about earlier. And I think that all these external factors that cause people so many stress, they massively cloud our ability to recognize there are so many things to be grateful for. And we do 2024, we have so many things in our lives that make our life amazing and make our life comfortable
Yes.
that we no longer really see as something to be grateful for because that's a given, like a house, a job, food, all the water, like sleeping in a bed, like all these things are like 100 years ago, like not everyone had these things. Like it was
Right.
pretty tough back then, but like now we're so comfortable with these fundamental things that we require as human beings that we forget to be grateful for those. And I think that once you can slow down the externalities and you can get back to fundamentals and recognize that you should be absolutely grateful for so many things. And we have a practice at home where we talk about the things we're grateful for before we eat. And I think that not many people think about that these days because there's so much noise just clouding out that very simple fact that life is pretty good for a lot of people.
Well, you mentioned that you're in Canada and I'm in the United States, and the poorest of the poor in Canada and in the United States have it better than 80% of the rest of the people
Hmm.
in the world. I mean, most people in Canada and most people in the United States can find something to eat.
Yeah.
They can find some kind of shelter. They can find some clothing. They have shoes. They can find the basic survival needs can be met
Hmm.
by the vast majority of people.
Yeah.
So once you get past those survival needs, in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you can start thinking about social needs, self-actualization needs, self-esteem needs, but the gratitude is things to be grateful for can be found everywhere. If you wait, like you mentioned, if you wake up in the morning and you got a good night's sleep because you weren't worried that some wild animal was going to come and eat you or some
Hmm.
bomb wasn't going to drop on you, then you're in pretty good. That's something to be grateful for.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you can eat a nice breakfast that's nutritious and it's not spoiled or contaminated by anything, that's something to be grateful. If you have good friends, and if anybody who has one or two or three really, really good friends that they know that they can count on should drop down on their knees every day and thank God that
Yeah.
that's how grateful they should be. Because so many people have chosen, could have more friends than they do, but they've chosen to isolate themselves for one reason or another. If you have a spouse or a significant other that you have a good, strong relationship with, that's something to be grateful for.
Hmm.
If your children are healthy, that's something to be grateful for. If the sun's shining outside and there's flowers and trees and there's relatively clean air, that's something to be grateful for.
Yeah.
If you know, I've got a cute little dog that I really love my dog, and when my dog comes and jumps on my lap and licks my face, I'm grateful for that because it's a
Hmm.
pretty cool thing. It's simple. Great things to be grateful for don't have to be huge. They can be simple things.
Hmm.
But
And I
if you
just, yeah, sorry, yeah, please
oh,
carry
go
on.
ahead.
I was just going to say, like, when you begin to fill your day and your thoughts and your feelings with gratitude, you the frequency of the sensation and feeling of gratitude is very, very different from anger. And you can
Oh,
there's YouTube videos, there's research papers on the research of this, and you just begin to become a stronger individual. And once you do that on like a micro level, it becomes like this new, incredible, addicting thing to be a part of.
well, when you start to feel grateful, you'll find yourself instinctively smiling.
Hmm.
I mean, nobody's telling you a joke. It's just you feel so good
Yeah.
about what you feel grateful for that you break out into a smile.
Yeah.
And smiling is feels better, looks better, is better for you than the anger, clenched fists, clenched teeth, crying. I mean, a good cry is good every once in a while too,
Yeah.
uh, you know what I'm saying? It just feels better on your body. It creates. You know, you mentioned the dopamine hit. I think feeling gratitude is going to give you a serotonin
Hmm.
hit more than a dopamine hit, and that lasts a lot longer.
That's right. No, it's super interesting. I think that people have got so many things at their fingertips that they don't recognize that they can start feeling amazing. Like I know a few people who once they'll go watch a funny movie and their jaw pain disappears or their back
Right.
pain disappears because they're biochemically changing. It's very,
Right.
very fascinating. It's very
Yeah.
interesting. And when I was reading this Stoicism book for the first time, this is before kids, but there was had some interesting practices around appreciation, and it was like go and spend one night of your week, go sleep in the garden, and then the next night and the next nights beyond that, you are going to appreciate and be super grateful that you have a bed and you have a bedroom and you have a house. And they're just yeah, as I'm a type of person that likes to try to practice those types of things because they stick with me, and it's a very strong motivator to wake up to gratitude rather than going into a subconscious stress pattern.
Sure.
Mhm. Well, we chatted about a lot of different things today. We were going to be talking about self-love and relationships, but and the systems that influence us. And we've definitely jumped in and out of that topic, and we've spoken more about like the perils of social media, I guess, the power of gratitude, and the vital importance that recognizing the external stresses have on our mental and physical lives. So I'd love to get you back on the show to kind of dive in a little bit more about relationships and self-love, and maybe talk about some practical ways in which people can, begin to create beneficial aspects around those topics. So I hope you'd be willing to come back
Oh,
onto the show.
absolutely. Anytime. Just send me an invite. I'll be there.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, we're going to wrap this up just by, if you can just let us know where people can connect with you, and I'll make sure those links are in the show notes for people to get hold of you and learn more.
Sure. My website is angelovalenti.com. If you'd like to book a discovery call and see how we might work together on a coaching capacity, it's reachangelo.com. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Twitter,
You're everywhere.
X now, and I'm on LinkedIn, Angelo Valenti, PhD on LinkedIn. I'm not hard to find. You could buy my book on Amazon. You could buy it from my website, angelovalenti.com. It's also available on Audible. If you'd like to hear my reading of my book, that was a fun experience. So I'd love to hear from you, and I really appreciate the opportunity to visit with you today.
Beautiful. Well, Dr. Angelo, I really appreciate your time today and your insights. I absolutely love it when we go off topic from like what's been like kind of predetermined. I think that just makes for a organic, natural conversation. And I think a lot of people are going to benefit from this conversation, have inspiring thoughts of their own on these topics. So yeah, thank you so much again for coming onto the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Well, that is it for this episode of Truehope Cast, the official podcast of Truehope Canada. Again, like, the show notes will be filled with links in regards to the couple of books we've spoken about today, as well as how you can connect with Dr. Angelo. But that is it for this episode. We'll see you next week.